Alright, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Rockthevox here, and I really hope this thing is not too loud for you or too quiet. I've been trying to figure out what the best position for my microphone is so that you guys can hear me, but that I can also still talk to you comfortably without having a microphone shoved down my throat. Yes, insert graphic, violent, well, not necessarily violent, rape picture of me sucking a fucking microphone. Yes. Lovely imagery. Yes, I know. Yes. But yes, we're back here again in Vice City, and this time we're going to be doing a little work on the parking lot and discussing the third week of the Stephen Carpenter bomb that is the I do apologize. Rip headphone users. Summer of Stephen. We have just finished up the third week, and yeah. So, was a little annoyed about Friday. That said, everything thus far has been fairly intriguing. Though, I know beta has been leaked. I refuse to watch it. I will refuse to watch any episode before its premiere date, or before it's even premiered on TV, period. So, say an episode is leaked like an hour beforehand, before it is scheduled to show on TV, I will not watch it until afterwards. If you're a fan of the Steven Universe franchise, please, I implore you to do the same. We all know CN is sort of on the soulless side when it comes to ratings, and not unjustifiably so. So, I really, really don't want to see this series take the same turn for the worse that Megas did. Both series are amazing in their own way for their own reasons. And it would be an absolute travesty to see Steven Universe get canceled because of a lack of ratings, because it kept having its episodes leaked a few hours before they're scheduled to premiere. I'm looking at you, a handful of Facebook groups. Personal vendettas against certain Facebook groups aside, I want to sort of do a loose address to certain folks out there who say Steven Universe is like My Little Pony. Now, I've never personally watched any of the MLP series, and I probably never in my life will ever watch it unless I have a female child at some point down the road. And even then, I pray that she doesn't go that route, because, I feel bad for my mom, because I was that one kid who was into Thomas the Train. And God, I must have bored the ever-living shit out of her with that stupid song and dance whistle at the start of the show. And this, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, was years ago. Back when you could only find it on VHS. Back when the first one came out on movie, everyone lost their shit. And I still have some of the old wood trains, and they don't make those anymore. So I'm set for some monies. By the way, I do apologize for the horrible FPS. Let's just try and somewhat change that. Downtown, unfortunately, in Vice City is still a tad bit laggy. We're working on ways of correcting that. If you want to hop onto the server, the link is this. Or, no, actually, it's... If you wish to join the server, that's the link right there. That is the IP. rexventus.ddns.net. That will allow you to join the server, and you can browse around if you wish. Now, what do I think of Bismuth's backstory? Somehow I knew this was going to happen. Like, when I started seeing some of this stuff hanging around, like the leaked snippet from that episode, Bismuth, something just didn't sit right. Why would... The question I was asking myself, why is Bismuth in there in the first place? And as the episode progressed, we found out. And though it was really touching to see Pearl lose her shit like that, like go all sobby over Bismuth returning, which understandably so. I mean, this is a person that, for the most part, everyone else thought was either dead or corrupted. Yeah. So, when you haven't seen someone who you thought had been dead for what to a gem would probably be 10 to 20 years, suddenly still be alive, yeah, you're gonna be a little emotional, unhappy that they're back. Was it tragic to see what happened to Bismuth? Abso-fucking-lutely. However, there are parts of me that says that the entire episode, what am I, Russian? Yes, comrade, you are a Russian. Now come drink vodka. All puns aside, all jokes aside. Where was I? Talking about Bismuth. Sorry, I know this is a tad bit rambly. I don't write scripts out. I'm not one of those people that sits down and recites a script, because I kind of do it freeform, because, you know, otherwise the train of thinking leaves the station without me. And then it's chasing down the caboose of thunking. Lovely stuff. And in case you're wondering what I'm doing, this is a sponge block that I'm currently holding, and wet sponge actually, and I'm throwing these grates in around so that, because, you know, Florida, there are grates in every parking lot. But with Bismuth, it's a greater struggle between should or should not. As far as the breaking point weapon is concerned, from weapon test demonstration, that is some incredibly devastating power. And in fact, it's a tool very similar to that that's used to break gems. You scar a line, even in glass, which is also in it of itself a crystalline structure. What you do is you scar a light line across it. I've had to deal with the same principles with some really temperamental plexiglass. I forget the actual substance. It's a type of clear plastic that's used in showcases, and what you do is you give a light scarring to the surface to designate the crack line, and then you whack it to the side and it shatters right along that line. And in the same instance with glass, a cutting tool is used to scar the surface of the material, and then you come in with a light tap and it breaks, because that's just the way it rolls, literally. So as far as effectiveness is concerned, it's absolutely devastating. But that's on standing targets. We're going to discuss this a little bit in detail. In a battle scenario, a weapon like that would be incredibly difficult to use, I think. Just because you have constantly changing targets, moving trajectories, and then you got to account for the recoil. Which is going to... The second that cylinder extends forward or back into the housing, that's going to cause a lot of momentum, and that's going to help carry your fist forward. So if you're not dead center, you're just going to poof them. More or less, it would be something akin to a less useful battle axe, as far as effectiveness is concerned. With lots of training, could it be useful? Absolutely. But would it be a practical weapon on the battlefield? I don't think so. Would it be a great executioner's tool? Absolutely. It'd be the gem equivalent of the guillotine. See, the reason I say that it wouldn't be that good of a weapon in the first place on the battlefield is simply because you have to know where the gems thing is and mark it up. Otherwise, you're just going to miss and poof them and destroy their physical hologram form and leave them poofed and able to regenerate. Now, let's discuss the moral ethics of this weapon. I think both Rose and Steven made the right call by not using this weapon. Would it be an effective tool? Sure. But would it be the morally correct tool? No. This is a problem that comes in war. To get a little bit into human history, for example. World War I was originally called the Great War, the war to end all wars. If you were ever able to talk to a survivor, the handful that are still around, or read the biographies of survivors and combat members of the conflict, there was no weapons that were used in such prolific amounts that were used previously in any prior war. It was the first major bloodshed in human conflict. While there were prior wars that were bloody and massive in their own right, the First World War was on a whole nother level. In fact, even though the death toll was higher during World War II, I would still like to think that World War I was a lot worse. You saw the worst possible inventions imaginable. Weapons that were, after the conflict, immediately banned at the Geneva Conventions, which, to get a little political here for a moment, that idiot Trump thinks are outdated! Such weapons include, and are not limited to, knives whose cross-section, if you were to take a cross-section out of, looks something like this, a triangle. In fact, no, it looks a little more like that. A three-sided knife. Why was this weapon banned? Well, it is one of the most effective weapons of killing a person possible. Even if you don't kill them with it, with the wound itself directly, by bleeding them out, say you nicked or sliced a major artery or vein, it was a nightmarishly difficult task to seal those up because it made a hole, like a gunshot wound, like a shotgun blast at point blank. It's impossible to stitch something that massive up. No, I'm not joking you when I say this. A lot of soldiers bled out. The ones who didn't, the few that survived, were only because they got enough medicine in them. The rest died to infection because it was just that difficult to stitch those back up. Another weapon that was banned during World War I, or after World War I, mustard gas. Now, mustard gas is not actually the correct name for the substance. It's actually chlorine gas. Now, what does it do? Well, the gas vapor itself hangs around for only a short amount of time when the gas grenade is chucked. However, if you were to breathe in that toxic cloud, it would basically be like breathing in microscopic fibers of glass. It would make your lungs bleed and kill you from drowning in your own blood. And if you didn't breathe it in, it created a secondary side effect. It was a heavy, heavy mist. So heavy that it stayed close and low to the ground. That's why whenever you see photos of World War I, you see a wasteland. Barren of all life. Dirt and mud. The ridiculous number of explosives were used during that war. And because there was no nature to suck up the poisons, it sat in the mud. And that mud got turned back into dirt because the water got sucked out of it through the water cycle. The chemicals were still very much volatile and very much active in the water. And when that came back down, because it's real dense, it created a toxic rain that would drip off the back of the soldiers' helmets. And these helmets are pretty crude. Think something that looks like a hubcap with a lid around it. Like, literally, that's what it looked like. And soldiers would be looking up for grenades or incoming bombers. And I say bombers, and we're talking old school raggedy ass biplanes with machine guns mounted to them. And this rain would come down on them and drip down their back and eat the flesh going down their spine to their ass crack. Those that died like this died of infection because it became septic. What a horrible way to die. Now those are just two. There were lots of other weapons used, but those are the two big ones. How this relates to Bismuth's breaking point is that it's morally wrong. Because while the three-sided knife was used on both sides indiscriminately, the gas, half the time, would turn right back and kill or maim those that had flung it in the first place. So it was very indiscriminate, that gas. Once it was out, it came after you. No matter who you were, what side you were on. It's a very morally wrong decision. And the moral decision of using such a weapon would be too great of a cost. You have to hold yourself to a higher standard than the other guy. Because once you lose the moral high ground, then it just becomes a shit show and a bloodbath. No, I'm not joking you. It's literally some of the nastiest shit out there. And I'm very proud of Steven for fucking destroying that weapon. However, I think he may have jumped the gun a little bit. Now, this is my own personal opinion. And I know not everyone's going to agree with me. Part of me says that he should have kept it, but like way deep in some cave somewhere where not even Bismuth would find it, only he would know, just because. It's sort of like you need to remember the past in order not to repeat it, but at the same time you need to realize that there were people who had such strong thoughts and feelings. Yeah, it's one of those type of deals. I don't know how to really explain it. It's really difficult to explain, obviously. But that said, I think we've rambled on long enough. Come on. I think I've chewed out your ears for a long enough time. If you want to hop on the server, again, right there. I've been Rockthevox. You have been wonderful. And I shall see you in the next video. Peace. Please, if you would, head over to D-San Hondo's channel. He does amazing artwork. Check out the video. Subscribe to mine and his channel because they're absolutely friggin' amazing for different reasons. And hopefully you have a great day. See you next time.